Welcome to another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast, brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. Dr. Bill Kanasky. Part 4 of a new voir system model, okay, that is designed to be surgically precise from a psychological standpoint, to give you more weaponry, insight, and quite frankly, control of the juror brain. So this is part 4, final segment, and we are going to talk primarily, let's talk about sympathy in part 4, and we're going to combine that with commitment to following the law, right? Because you always got this, sympathy law, sympathy law, sympathy law. That's the problem with every deliberation, right? How people feel versus what the parameters are legally. Scares everybody. People are human, and the judge, the jury instructions, they all say, right, set sympathy aside. Well, that's impossible. It's absolutely impossible, right? Setting sympathy aside. It's got to be controlled. Okay? It's got to be controlled. So let's talk about this. So this section, let's call this sympathy override. Sympathy override. Okay? Because that's what you need. You need logic and the law to override. So you're not getting rid of sympathy. Let's just get that straight. So all these questions, can you put sympathy aside? Oh yeah, I can. Bullshit. Nope. That is impossible. From a neuropsychological standpoint, it's impossible. Okay? What we need to do is override, right? We need to have the logic/law override the sympathy that's always going to be there. Okay? How do we do that? Again, we have to do some things here to prime the brain for the problem. Remember, I've said it 4 episodes in a row. If you want to stop a problem, expose the problem up front. And that's what you're going to do here. Okay? You're going to talk about sympathy. Again, I like using stories, very short stories, with jurors that get them to open up. Again, makes you vulnerable, makes you look human, makes you likable, right? But give them like a non-legal example of something you're trying to tap into, and then that increases the odds of them opening up. Consider this example. We've all been there, ladies and gentlemen. A family member or a very close friend asks you for a loan. Oh, it's the worst. We've all been there. God, isn't that the worst, right? Someone that you know and love is struggling. They're struggling emotionally and financially. And you want to help them. Like, you want to help them. And by the way, I have personally been through this. And the result is never good, right? So you want to help these people, and deep down you're never seeing this money again, right? You're never, it's not a loan. You're giving them the money. And maybe you can't afford to give them the money. You've got your own stuff going on, right? And this is an emotional, right, decision, but you have your own internal rules of, I have a family. I have bills. Why don't I just give my money away, right? And you say no. And saying no to somebody you love, it feels cold, but deep down it was the right decision. Okay? It's choosing discipline and the rules over emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, has anybody ever been in this decision? Right? You ever had this decision put in front of you? Okay. I think that's a really, really good way to tap into that because most people have been there. And as you all know, when you loan money, you never get it back. Ever. Which is why I never loan money to anybody anymore, ever again. Because you're just giving it. You're never getting it back, right? Get this topic going. You're going to have people, and again, tie it to yourself. Like, so if I was you, I would say, assuming this has happened, I would say, yeah, this happened to me with two, one family member and one really, really close friends. And guess what? I don't even talk to them anymore now. Terrible, situation. Man, who here's been in this situation? How did you handle it? And when you get jurors that say what I just said and say, listen, I ain't doing that. I don't care who it is. I'm sticking to my parameters. And if they get mad at me, so be it. Versus you're gonna find some jurors that just have that they can't say no. And they keep making the same mistake. Right? You think you want that juror on your panel? I don't think so. Now, if someone's made this mistake before and they've corrected it, they say, yeah, I did it once, and boy, just like you, I got burned. Okay? But going forward, no. I'm maintaining discipline when it comes to my money. I think this is very, very important. Okay? Along that theme, I think that another thing that we found in our data and research is, this is where I'm kind of going off script here, but jurors that are very financially savvy, okay? They care about their money. They're frugal. They budget. Okay, they're not loosey goosey with money. Those are good jurors for you if you're the defense. Okay, because they're not just throwing money around there. They understand the value of money. Okay, this is really important. So ask them. Okay, there's my situation. Maybe you've been in that situation. Now, not everybody's been in that situation. So you can also say, ladies and gentlemen, can you think of a time where you felt emotionally pulled in one direction? You felt pulled and you had to make a decision based on the rules and not your feelings, and you stuck to the rules. Because guess what? That's what we're going to be asking you to do in this case. There's rules, and that's the jury instructions. That's the law that the judge is going to read to you and give to you. You're going to be put in this exact spot. How do you think you're going to handle it? Okay. What if you have a situation like we have here? A person's hurt. They're hurt badly. What if there's no evidence to show that my client caused this injury, but you still feel bad for him? How are you going to deal with that internally and start getting the discussion going? This is an exceptional topic that no one wants to touch. It's like kryptonite to attorneys. Okay? But what you're doing is you're priming the brain. Remember, if you want to stop a problem, expose the problem. And this is how you expose the problem. And remember, the formula here with exposing the problem is using everyday life examples and pulling yourself into it and telling your own examples. That's what gets, okay. You can expose the problem the wrong way and say, yeah, jurors are crazy. They make all these crazy emotional decisions. What do you think about that? You can't do that. You're going to piss everybody off. Okay? You're going to piss everybody off. So I think this is a good way to bring up the sympathy issue in a non-legal way. Okay? You're programming the juror brain on what this problem is and what the challenge is going to be. I like the loaning money example. There are other examples out there. Well, look at those, the ASCPA. Is that you've seen the commercials, right? Abused pets and stuff like that, and they want your donations. It pulls at your heartstrings. Pulls at your heartstrings. It can really get to you, right? But there's other situations in life where it happens as well. Come up with those, get those real life, everyday examples, and talk about the problem, which is your logical mind's going one way, your emotional, your heart, excuse me, Jesus, your heart's going a different way. I need more coffee. Okay. To prevent the problem, expose the problem, but expose the problem in two ways. It's the same formula every time. 4 episodes, same formula. Okay. Use real life examples, not legal examples. Number 1. Number 2, show how you have made the same mistake. Because you're human. Okay? That's what we're doing. Sympathy override. We have to expose it. All right? Now, next thing. Now we're getting deep. Now we're getting deep. And we're going to end with case-specific stuff. This is kind of the final, real psychological variable here. Okay? A lot of research done on this. And that is called pre-commitment theory. And you can use this on burden of proof, damages, okay? And what pre-commitment theory is, lots of research on this. Lots of research in dietary and exercise behavior, personal spending behavior, a lot of behavioral economics going on here, right? Where they've done a lot of research where when people publicly commit to something, the statistical odds of them carrying that through triple, they're sky high, versus someone that commits internally but not publicly, right? So for example, you say to yourself, right, it's 10 o'clock, you're going to bed, and you're like, I am waking up at 5 o'clock. I am going to go, just like Kanasky, I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to go get ripped and torn up at the gym because I want to get healthy, blah, 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 blah. You set your alarm, and you wake up, and that alarm goes off at 5 o'clock, and you are just snooze, and off, right? That's what happens to most people. Now, different situation. If the night before you are out with your friends or your family, say you're at the dinner. You're at the dinner with good friends, and your friends go, so what are you doing tomorrow? Bob? Jennifer? What are you doing tomorrow? And you say, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning because I really want to get healthy, and I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to rock it. I'm going to go get shredded. I'm going to lift heavy things because I care about my health. And you announce that publicly to your friends. The statistical odds of you hitting snooze drop to the floor. Why? Pressure. It's peer pressure. You remember peer pressure? We all grew up with this. Nancy Reagan, just say no to drugs. Peer pressure. God, in 1985, when I was in middle school, peer pressure. We've had peer pressure since we've been children. It works. It's a deep psychological pressure to keep your word. And when you just make the word to yourself, it's very easy to bail on the plan. Why? There's no accountability except to yourself. So the person that hits snooze and then never wakes up, yeah, they may kick themselves in the ass the rest of the day, but they don't have their friends doing it. And that's the worst thing in the world. So imagine you go out with the same group of friends the next night. Hey, how was your workout this morning? Oh, I skipped it. You skipped it? The hell is wrong with you, idiot? Nobody wants to go through that. Okay? Nobody wants to go through that. So that's why you'll see if you ever go to exercise groups or dietary, that's kind of like a group, by counseling or whatever, they focus on group work and public commitment to the group. I'm not going to let you down. I'm going to do my role for this group. And they publicly announce things. Lots, and I mean lots of science behind this. So let's just bring this into jury psychology. Okay, let's bring this into jury psychology and this is where it gets really cool, to not just keep the individual juror accountable to their commitment, but for them to keep others accountable. Okay, so here's how we got to do. We've got to, remember, expose the problem. You want to stop the problem, expose the problem. And the problem is, again, it's not following the law and letting emotions get in the way. Okay, this kind of dovetails from the sympathy override. This is kind of step 2 to this, is to say, okay, now, and here's kind of the basic question behind this, which judges ask, which is terrible. A lot of attorneys, can you put your sympathy aside and follow the law? And everybody says yes. Well, we all know that's bullshit, right? That ain't happened. So the way to do this correctly is work in the pre-commitment theory science and say, here's the situation you're going to be in. You're going to hear a bunch of emotional stuff, and then you're going to have the law. And it's going to be heart versus the law. Juror number 1. You can't do it. You want to do this individually. Juror number 1, and you go one by one. Can you commit? Can you raise your hand and verbally commit to me that you're going to follow the law and not your heart? Because that's what the law says to do. Can you please verbally commit and raise your hand? Once they do that, they're going to have a really, really, really hard time in deliberations going emotional. They're going to have the cognitive dissonance, right? We talked about that earlier. The cognitive dissonance will be incredible if they committed to the whole group. It's the same science. Okay? And here's the follow-up. Now, the very first thing you do right now is you go, thank you. You operant conditioning, reinforcement, right? It's all psychology, ladies and gentlemen. I love this job. It's all psychology. Okay? Once they commit, the first thing you do is thank you for your commitment to following the law. I appreciate that, juror number 1. So you're reinforcing it, okay? Now here's the good thing. You're going to see some people struggle. You're going to see some people kind of half like alligator arms, right? Like half a hand up going, yeah, I guess I commit. And as the attorney, you got to call that out and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is where you're, now you're setting up a cause challenge here. Right? Imagine that. You go, Your Honor, juror number 1 can't even fully commit to following the law. That's, we asked her, right? She's very iffy about it, right? You're going to find the iffy people, okay? And hopefully you can set them up for cause. If not, they're very high on your peremptory list because they're going to screw you in deliberations because they're not committing to following the law. They're saying, no, I'm going to leave this emotional door open. Can't have that, okay? So if they commit and they do it, the follow-up question, this is gold. As my 16-year-old says, this is fire. That's fire. That's what the kids are saying now, by the way. It's fire. All right. This next question is fire. Okay. Juror number 1. If another juror in deliberations, not you, somebody else, wanted to award money just to help the plaintiff, they abandon the law. Nothing about burden of proof. Would you be comfortable? Would you be able to and willing to speak up and say, whoa, 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 wait a second. Our job as jurors is to stick to the law. Juror number 1, would you be able to do that and keep your fellow jurors accountable to stick to the law? Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, I came up with this actually long ago. The problem is nobody listens. Nobody likes change. And nobody listens. amazing trial attorney, Tony Batista, who was on the show, 2 episodes. That's his famous phrase. Nobody listens. Okay? This is the work you have to do to create this enormous, and I'm talking enormous. There's no other pressure more enormous than peer pressure. We've dealt with this since children. The brain's pre-programmed for it. Peer pressure. Think about it. How many dumbass things have you done in your life because peer pressure? My list is endless. And not just as a kid, into an adult, right? I've caught my kids doing dumb stuff, and I'm like, why in the world did you do something so dumbass? Why? You know what they're responsible? Well, everybody else is doing it. They told me I was a sissy if I didn't do it. Right? It's peer pressure. It works, and it's a human thing, not a kid thing. It goes all the way into adulthood. Okay? It's alive and well. Use it. Use it for sympathy override. Get the commitment and make sure it's authentic. If it's not authentic, cause challenge. Or they're very high in your peremptory list, okay? Once you get the commitment, get another commitment going, okay, well, guess what? Thank you for your commitment. But there's 11 other people. Or 5 other people if you're in Florida. These other people, they may abandon the game plan here and start putting emotion over the law. What are you going to be able to keep them in line? That's what you're doing here. Okay? Do you have the strength to speak up and to say, whoa, 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 we got to follow the law? That's our job as jurors. Okay? Get that commitment and then double down on the peer pressure accountability. And you're cooking with gas. Cooking with gas. All right. This is good stuff. Very good stuff. Okay, let's finish up part 4 of this podcast. I hope that you guys have found this stuff useful. Okay. Again, I read a bunch of voir dire scripts. I watch voir dire. And again, the questions I see and hear, I'm not saying they're terrible questions. I'm saying that they're very rudimentary. They usually focus on people's experiences, and they fail to dig deep enough to detect what you're actually looking for on the exploratory end. And that's what most questions are. Most voir dire questions I've seen are designed to detect bias, which is great, but you got to be able to dig deeper and get to the heart of the matter. So if you're not doing that well, it's not effective. But the other half of this equation largely gets ignored, and the reason why is this whole kind of neurocognitive programming, right? We're pre-programming, it's like software on your phone, right? You load software on your phone. You're loading software onto the juror brain before deliberations. That's what you're doing with the other half of the questions. You want to program it to do some things and program it to avoid other things. You want to avoid problems. What are you doing? You expose the problems. Inoculation. And we've covered the various ways to do this. On burden of proof, on sympathy, damages, right? Okay, last section. Now, and by the way, with any of these other questions, you can use those on any case. Now, you're going to have to ask you're going to have to ask case-specific questions, right? For example, things like pre-existing conditions of the plaintiff. Well, that's not going to come up in every single case. But this example of case-specific questions, okay? And you got to bring this stuff up and kind of talk about what the evidence is going to be, right? How do they feel about, for example, pre-existing medical conditions? And you're going to have experts come in here giving testimony. They're going to completely disagree with each other. Are you comfortable with that type of testimony? Or is that overwhelming for you? That's something you're interested in? Or you really don't care about it? Okay? So, like the final chapter here, which I really can't get into specifically because every case is different, is you're going to want to test the issues of your case. Sometimes it's causation, right? And you're kind of giving them little hypotheticals. What if you had this situation, right? Could be causation, could be pre-existing conditions, could be contributory negligence, okay? And you get into more of the case specifics of your case, right? So if the case is about trucking, you're going to bring up some trucking questions here in this section and kind of bounce those things off, right? Because you want their attitudes about trucks, the trucking industry, their personal experiences. Are they scared of trucks, right? All the case-specific stuff that you're going to write. Now, those questions, obviously, you'd never ask in a med-mal case. You know, med-mal is going to be their experiences and their attitudes and their beliefs towards the medical industry, right? You're going to ask those. So those questions have to be really specifically designed on a case-by-case basis. Construction, same way. Medical device, same way. Employment, same way. So that section of your script is going to be fresh every time because it has to really align with the facts and the situation of your case, right? Are you admitting liability or not admitting liability? All right. So what you see here, and again, this is my belief, but again, no one, like Tony Batista says, no one listens. You should have a large percentage of your voir dire script tapping into these psychological variables that I've discussed in these 4 episodes. These are key because not only are you getting people to open up, right, to detect this, the bias that you're looking for, but the key here is preloading, pre-programming the brain to deal with the issues they're going to deal with in deliberations. Because this is where the wheels come off, folks. People get into deliberations and their brains go crazy and you get these crazy verdicts, right? Well, why does that happen? Their brain, that's the first time they've been exposed to the problems. They don't even know it's a problem. Okay? How do you prevent that? Expose the problem. Expose the problem in jury selection, which forces them to digest that problem right there. And then you got recency on your side, right? A week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. That same problem's going to come up and you have just uploaded the software to their brain on exactly how to deal with it. That's the missing link here. This often gets skipped. So then when this problem happens in the deliberation, the brain just defaults to the previous software, which has been installed by society, by the way. That's not good for you. You need to install your own software. But you see, it's a delicate balance. The setup to all these questions is really important. A conversational, open, vulnerable tone to get these folks to open up. Make sure, remember, tell your stories. Your stories from childhood or marriage or with your kids. How you've made some of these cognitive errors and emotional errors. I mean, just think about how many times have you met somebody and you went with your gut and you really liked them and they turn out to be a jerk. And then the opposite. You meet somebody, your gut feeling is they're a jerk, but then when you get more information, you're like, wow, this person's not so bad. I kind of like them. We all go through that as human beings. That's what happens in cases. You get all this plaintiff information up front. Well, do you lock in there? Or do you know in the back of your mind, I've got to wait till I get all the information because I've been through this. Well, if you pre-program them to do that in jury selection, they'll do it. But what do? No, you ask the question, are you willing to keep an open mind? The plaintiff always gets to go first. I got to go second. That's just the way it works, ladies and gentlemen. Who here is willing? Raise your hand if you're willing to keep an open mind and listen to my case. That's a dumb question. Everybody's gonna say yes. That's not the way to do that. You have to set up that question by talking about the human experience of how that issue can be problematic and lead to faulty conclusions. Then you ask that question afterwards. Why? You've pre-programmed them. You've preloaded the software. All right. So, all right. That's it. I hope, 4-part series on this. And again, maybe it's for you, maybe it's not for you. But this is, jurors are humans, and this is psychology, folks. This is psychology. So contact me if you have questions. I've got 2 papers coming out on this. 2 papers coming out on this, so those will be available shortly. And as a reminder, I've been told by our producer to say this at the end of every podcast. Please. So guess what? Okay, so our YouTube channel, if you're watching on YouTube, okay, we're at over 10,000 subscribers. Do you know how many YouTube channels have 10,000 subscribers or more? About 3%. Okay. And on the other platforms, we have over 100,000 downloads of our episodes. It's much, much harder to track that. But so whether you're on YouTube or you're on Spotify or you're on Apple, whatever, okay, give us a rating, leave us a review. And if you love the podcast, give us a rating, and please put down some comments on why you love the podcast. If you hate the podcast, give us a shit rating and tell me how much you don't like me. That's fine. I'm okay. I'm about to turn 52. I can take it now. 10 years ago, not so much. I'd hunt you down. No, I'm not going to do that. No. We want more subscribers. We want this to be beneficial. We've done a serious kind of search out there for other podcasts that are doing anything like this, and I just don't think you're gonna find it. There's a couple out there, and they have like under 100 episodes. I think they have under 50 episodes actually. We're pushing 305 years, and we want to keep it rocking and rolling. We get great feedback, and if you want to be a guest, okay, I love having guests. You want to be a guest on the podcast? Shoot me an email, bkanasky@courtroomsciences.com, and we'd love to have you on. I like to do more panels, right? Get a couple people on, maybe debate something, all right? But this podcast has been so fun. We've gotten so overwhelming feedback from just hundreds and hundreds of attorneys and some claims people that listen to it. So if it's working, we're not going to stop. We're going to keep doing it. So thank you for all the support. Again, this is part 4 of Voir. I hope you enjoyed this litigation psychology podcast brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. This is Dr. Bill Kanasky. We will see you next time.